Welcome to my channel. This is Nomadic J. If this is your first time, please consider subscribing, liking, commenting, and click that notification bell for the next video. This video is about my thoughts on being in Colombia for the last 90 days. I lived in 3 different cities, Bogota, Medellin, and Cartagena. And I want to share my thoughts. Most of it's just random, but these are not good or bad, pros or cons. These are just my thoughts and things that I thought about in each individual city. But I'm gonna go through each individual city and just kind of go through them first. So let's start off with Bogota. That's the first city that I actually stayed in when I came to Colombia. Obviously, Bogota is definitely a exercise type city, even though the weather doesn't dictate it. You know, if you into bicycles or anything like that, definitely a bicycle culture in Medellin. In fact, that's part of how a lot of people get to work, you know, because they really don't have, you know, only public transportation that they have is really just, you know, taxis and buses. So a lot of people get to work by some type of bicycle. So, and they definitely have a lot of dedicated lanes just for bicycle. So definitely it's a bicycle culture if you're into that type of thing. Food, obviously, the international city. You can get all type of food in Bogota. It's an old city, has all type of restaurants, no matter what country you're from. The biggest thing I noticed in some of the local, you know, areas, paellas are pretty much just grill type meat. You find a lot of restaurant, you know, focus on grill type meat. You know, even in going to the mall, you're gonna find grilled paella just throughout, just grill type of meat, mostly beef or some type of pork. The weather is definitely an adjustment in Bogota. It is cold, not by U.S. standards, but it's definitely cold. You know, when you talk about the average temperature, 58 to 62 on a good day, well, not in a good day, that's just the average temperature. And it's mostly cloudy, seemed like 90% of the time, and most of the time I was there, it was cloudy. I had a couple good days where it warmed up, but it was only 64, but it felt warmer because it was partly cloudy. So definitely it takes some getting used to. And the dreary and raining doesn't help a lot. To my opinion, as far as expenses, it doesn't feel like an expensive city. I won't say it's a cheap city, but to be a major, large city, and I stayed in Chapinero area, and I obviously stayed in Airbnb, I was able to find decent one-bedroom apartments, you know, for under, you know, around $500, which I thought was great, you know, for a halfway. Obviously, I wasn't in the Zona Rosa area, but it's a little more expensive. But I did see, you know, apartments up there, a little more out in the outer area, not this area, in the Zona Rosa area, you know, around that same price. So, you know, obviously if I stayed there a long time, I can probably find, you know, really good prices, you know, for Bogota. So I find it relatively, I don't know, inexpensive. Graffiti, everywhere, even in some of the nice areas. Obviously, it's not as prevalent in the nice areas as some of the areas that probably not so nice. But graffiti, and I'm not talking about the artsy, good type of graffiti. I'm talking about the graffiti that's standard graffiti, where you see it everywhere. I mean, writings on everything. The buses, well, not necessarily the buses, but definitely the buildings everywhere. On the roads, the building, the sidewalk, graffiti everywhere. Something you have to get used to. Sex shops. I find a lot of sex shops, or what we might call novelty shops, or adult bookstores, or whatever. I find a lot of them in Bogota. I didn't see as many like that in prevalent places like the malls and stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of them. Just not sure why so many sex shops. Fruit stores. I was surprised to find a lot of fruit stores. I didn't have to worry about going to a central market because there were plenty of fruit stores, at least where I was living at. In Bogota, and I'm talking about all types of fruit, you know, not just some of the typical tropical fruit you expect in Colombia. I'm talking about strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, all type of fruits, and type of fruit stores, and reasonable price in a major city like Bogota. Grittiness of the city, of course, you know, that's something you got to get used to, and of course the graffiti doesn't help a lot. So it's a gritty city. That's a good and bad thing. You just got to adjust to it. Crime, I'm sure it has a lot of crime. I didn't experience anything personally other than, I'm sure you watch this video above, where I did see a guard, you know, was warning somebody to move from a location, and when the person didn't move, he just put out his gun and shot in the air. But that didn't affect me personally. I just happened to witness it. But for the most part, I didn't see or feel or experience any crime. Here's the deal. Anytime I went out, I always felt guarded, though. I didn't feel scared or over, too nervous. I always felt guarded. It seemed like the further north I walked, the less guarded I became. So I always walked out guarded, but I didn't really fear of going anywhere because of concern of crime. People was extremely nice. I can't say they spoke to you like anyone else, but whenever you went into a business or something, they was always courteous everywhere I went. I never had a bad customer service in any stores, whether it's a cell phone store or store where I bought protein or anything like that, or even the gym. Never felt any problem with the people. They were always courteous and nice everywhere I went. Fruit, again, I mentioned the fruit store. Trash. Now, they have a unique trash collection system, it seems like, in Colombia, where they just seem to just pile up the trash outside, not in no bins or trash cans, just pile it up and to be picked up probably later at the night. So sometimes you would drive down and just see just piles and piles of just scattered trash. It's going to get picked up, but just the way it is. I even noticed that in Medellin and even Cartagena, but it just seemed to be more prevalent in Bogota because it has that grittiness, and of course with the trash and the graffiti, just make it any better. Spanish is not widely. English, is not widely spoken, and not spoken at all. I don't think I ran into anybody who spoke even a little English. So English is definitely not widely spoken in Bogota. All right, so let's focus on the next city. Next city is Medellin. I spent a month there, so let's talk about Medellin. The weather. The weather was just perfecto. The weather was balmy, especially when I got there. When I arrived, it was balmy, 80 degrees, nice, windy. Oh my God, it's almost like I arrived in some type of utopia for weather. So I understand why the city's called Eternal Spring, the city of Eternal Spring, because it was definitely beautiful. The whole time I was there was a couple of days where it was a little cooler, but for the most part, the weather was just perfect. You can't say anything nice. I can't say anything bad about the weather. The weather was definitely perfect. So I understand why people move here and don't want to leave. Food, of course, they have all type of restaurants, but obviously mostly Colombian food, especially the local cuisine. And of course, my beans and rice. I'm a big beans and rice guy. And I was so happy to find beans and rice, which I didn't really see in Bogota. Obviously, it's centered around a lot of their cheap dishes, bandeja paisa, which is one of their main dish. Beans and rice is definitely one of the items, as well as, some type of, protein. But definitely a lot of cheap food in Medellin. People, again, were extremely nice. Again, everywhere I went, I never had a problem with people being mean, whether I was on the metro or wherever. People were extremely nice. And sometimes some people would speak, even in the neighborhood that I stayed in. Some people say hello and some people wouldn't. But I didn't, think that as a negative. It's just like, okay, just like a lot of places, even where the state, where I, lived there for the last 20 years, DC, not everyone spoke to you. So it was something I was used to. But I was, always happy and satisfied when people did, say, hello in Spanish. So that was always good. Transportation, probably one of the best in Colombia. They have a real transportation network, with buses and trains and tram cars and trolleys and cable cars. Obviously, definitely, top-notch transportation system. You don't really need a car. I don't think I used a taxi or Uber, more than one, maybe 2 or 3 times, only because I needed to get somewhere in a hurry. I always either walked or used public transportation. The hills. Obviously, the city has a lot of hills, and Poblado is definitely one of the popular neighborhoods that has a lot of hills. So you definitely, if you do a lot of walking like I do, you definitely have to deal with a lot of hills. There are some areas like Laureles that just tend to be flat, very walkable city. But if you go to Poblado, definitely get ready for a lot of hills, steep hills too. My comfort level, I have to admit, of all the places that I've been, I seem to adjust extremely well and fast in Medellin. It's almost like I've been there, many times, because it seemed like the next day I was, had my system, I try to get a routine no matter where I go. And it seemed like I was super, super comfortable with everything I did in Medellin, which brings up to the next question. I never see any issue with crime or anything like that. I never experienced any crime, never seen any crime, never felt, my safety was in jeopardy, which is interesting that I would watch different videos about things, robberies and stuff happening in Medellin, and I'm thinking like, wow, that happened, during the same time I'm here. You know what I mean? It just kind of threw me off. It's almost like I was, there was one thing happening somewhere else and I wasn't experiencing anything. So people, again, I already talked about the people. Now, despite what people say, English is not spoken widely in Medellin either. Despite you having a lot of tourists, especially in the Poblado area, I went to many places where English was not spoken at all. You know what I mean? Even in the Poblado area. So just understand that English is not spoken. You can even get things across if you don't speak English, but just understand English is definitely not spoken in a lot of places in Medellin. Exercise equipment, the gyms, they have plenty of parks with exercise equipment where you can work out outside. I definitely appreciated that. I appreciate any city. That seemed like I found a lot of that in South America, and even in Mexico, I saw a couple places where they had like outside facilities where you can work out outside. I definitely appreciate it. The only place I can think of in the U.S. is just Miami, and I definitely appreciated that when I was in Miami. So it's funny that you see that as a common thing inside of Medellin. All right, the next city I want to go over is Cartagena, which is where I'm at right now. Let's talk about Cartagena. Cartagena is definitely hot. But the wall city, the part where people, the tourists, that is definitely a beautiful part, especially at night. I mean, I went to it and did a tour through the daytime, and I thought it was nice, but it was like it was on a whole different world at nighttime, because you obviously, you had the horses and the horse-drawn carriages and people, having little weddings and pictures. It was definitely some type of fairy tale, especially at night. Beautiful area, both the wall city and probably Gethsemane area. Beautiful area at night. Boca Grande is a nice area, which is where most people stayed at. So it was nice because that's where all the beaches are. This area is definitely centered around beaches. If you're not touring, the wall city, the wall and everything, then you're pretty much just chilling on the beach. And if you want nicer beaches than what's on Boca Grande, you have to travel. So I'm not saying there's not a lot to do, but it's definitely where areas I had to kind of think, okay, I did this, do that, what is there to do? So, but you get to enjoy the beach, which I definitely enjoy walking on every day, or even just walking up and down the street. But it's not, everything is centered really around the beaches. It's definitely not cheap in this area. I mean, again, the only reason I came to this area, because it really wasn't on my original list of cities to visit, because the cost an Airbnb. It's really expensive, especially if you stay in an area that's, supposed to be halfway decent, as far as, low crime and so on and so forth. Definitely expensive. Food is semi-expensive, but, if you look for local type things, it's not super bad, but you definitely a lot more expensive. The only reason I agreed to come here is because, again, I figured, all right, before I leave Colombia, I want to visit the free town of Palenque. And I, created the video for that, and I wanted to check that out. So I figured, okay, I go to Cartagena and stay there for a while and visit Palenque, because, everyone, people I know just say you definitely should check out Palenque, and I'm glad I did. So I went ahead and bit the bullet on the budget, because by visiting Cartagena. Again, I talked about the hot weather. It's hot here. It's definitely hot. It's extremely humid. It's hot. That's all I need to say. It's definitely hot. The big thing you have to worry about the hagglers, the vendors, the people trying to sell it, the vendors just trying to sell you hats and whatever. I mean, they're nice. Don't get me wrong. They're extremely nice. I haven't had any rude vendors, but they just will haggle you to death. In fact, they will follow you. They're on the beach. You walking off the beach. They follow you off the beach, walking with you up the street, even after you have said no many, many times. Those hagglers, those vendors ain't no joke. And it seems like they would sell you anything, everything. Even if they're selling sunglasses, they seem to be able to sell you hats, get you an apartment, drugs if you want drugs, and obviously, personal satisfaction, you know what I mean? Prostitutes if you want that. I mean, they seem to sell everything. So definitely, you gotta watch for those vendors. They're extremely nice here. Believe it or not, never ran into any problem. And in Spanish, English. Excuse me. Surprisingly, there's a lot more people speak English here than I expected. Maybe because of the whole tourism, and then, Cartagena has always been, even when Colombia had its heyday, people always used to visit Cartagena because there's always been a city where people visited. So I guess I'm not surprised that, Cartagena has a lot of people who speak English. Most of them vendors, not anywhere else. Most of the vendors, a lot of them speak really good English. Like, definitely been exposed to a lot of people outside the U.S. So anyway, I hope you really enjoyed my thoughts. Again, these are my personal opinion. I love the country. I really want to come back one day. I mean, I was starting to stay longer because I still want to check out Cali, and I want to check out a couple other areas in this city. But, I'm a traveler. I want to try to travel and see other countries. So don't forget to like, comment, and click the notification bell. And I definitely will see you in the next country. Thank you for watching.